The world's most haunted locations. Welcome back, everyone. I know we've explored a lot of creepy things on this channel so far. Serial killers, mythical creatures, folklore, SCPs, but I've never discussed ghosts directly. But today, that changes, and I'm going to answer all your questions about these haunted locations. Like, how did it become haunted? What ghostly encounters have been recorded? And are these places even really haunted? We're going to start our journey with a classic tale, a story that has shaped beliefs about the paranormal for many. You remember the snow. How it fell in soft flurries across the fields of Norfolk, wrapping the countryside in white silence. That winter of 1835 was particularly cruel, bitter in the bone, but inside Rainham Hall, everything was warm, elegant, and alive. The manor stood like a monument to old wealth, stone walls, roaring fires, and centuries of secrets. You were among the chosen few, handpicked to attend the most exclusive Christmas celebration of the year. The halls glittered with candlelight. Servants in crimson livery passed silver trays of wine and roasted game. Gentle music floated from the grand piano, and the finest families in England mingled with laughter and murmurs. You were dressed in your best, velvet perhaps, and toasted. The night alongside colonels, lords, and ladies. It was a night to remember. And yet, as the festivities wound down and the last strains of music faded into the stone corridors, something shifted. You parted ways with your companions, the wine making you pleasantly drowsy. Your room was down a long, narrow hallway, barely lit, the sconces flickering with soft yellow flames. And that was when you saw her. A figure stood at the far end of the corridor. A woman, barely illuminated, her outline cloaked in the shadows. She wore a plain brown dress, not festive, not fine, but simple and oddly faded, like something out of another century. You didn't recognize her from the party, but then again, you hadn't met every guest. You assumed she was a servant or a latecomer and paid her no mind. You reached your room, closed the door, and fell asleep, thinking nothing of it. But the next morning, everything changed. It was Christmas Eve, and a brunch was laid out in Rainham's great hall. Pastries, meats, fruits piled high, all served with clinking glasses and holiday cheer. You took your place among the other guests, many of whom you had spoken with the night before. That's when the colonel spoke. "I saw something odd last night," he said casually, buttering a roll. "A woman in a brown dress standing in the hallway near the guest quarters." Another guest raised an eyebrow. "What did she look like?" The colonel leaned in. "Her clothes were old, far too old. Looked like something from the previous century. I thought perhaps a lost maid. But when I approached her, she turned around, and I saw her face." He paused, visibly unsettled. "There were no eyes," he whispered. "Just empty sockets. A pale, ghostly face staring straight through me." The table fell silent. Your blood ran cold. Another guest spoke up, a young woman who had also seen the brown-dressed figure. She hadn't looked at her face but remembered how she stood still, motionless, in the hall, unmoving, watching. The hostess, shaken, rose from her seat and tapped her spoon against her glass. The room hushed. "Did anyone else see a woman in brown last night?" she asked. Dozens of hands went up. Gasps, murmurs. The energy in the room changed. The brown lady had returned. Word spread quickly. Servants resigned that very day. Some packed their bags and fled, refusing to stay another night in that house. And not long after, the story reached the ears of a man who did not believe in ghosts. Captain Frederick Marriott, a naval officer, a man of logic, and a friend of Charles Dickens. Intrigued by the growing legend, Marriott requested permission to stay at Rainham Hall the following year, in 1836. He asked specifically to sleep in the most haunted room, the one closest to where the brown lady had last been seen. The owner granted his request. For the first 2 nights, nothing happened. The captain joked about the legend, though he still kept a loaded revolver under his pillow, just in case. On the third night, everything changed. He had just settled into bed when he noticed a movement in the hallway outside his door. He sat up, alert. A shadow was forming beneath the doorframe, not from behind it, but in front of it, inside the room. The shadow grew. He rose, revolver in hand, heart pounding. Then, out of the darkness, she emerged. The same brown dress, the same stillness. But now, she was closer than anyone had ever seen her. He shouted, "Stop! Stay back! I'll fire!" But she didn't stop. She smiled. It was a smile that chilled him to the core, cruel, knowing, empty. The brown lady floated forward. He fired. The gunshot rang out, echoing through the hall. When servants rushed in moments later, the room was empty. No sign of the woman, no blood, no body. Just the captain, pale and trembling. He left the manor that morning. He never returned. Years passed, and sightings of the brown lady continued to haunt the halls of Rainham. Whispers of her story were passed down until they became legend, and eventually, her identity was revealed. Her name was Dorothy Walpole, born in 1686. Sister to Robert Walpole, Britain's first prime minister. She married Charles Townshend, owner of Rainham Hall, a man infamous for his jealousy and rage. When he discovered Dorothy had once been involved with another man, he locked her away in the manor. She was forbidden from seeing anyone, not even her children. She lived out the remainder of her life as a prisoner in her own home. In 1726, she died of smallpox. At least, that's what they said. But others believed she died of grief. Or madness. Or worse. The legend might have faded if not for one final event. In 1936, photographers Captain Hubert Provand and Indre Shira were taking pictures of the manor for Country Life magazine. As they prepared to photograph the main staircase, Shira suddenly shouted for Provand to take the photo. He clicked the shutter. When the image was developed, a misty figure was seen descending the stairs. It was unmistakable, a translucent woman in a brown dress. The photo became one of the most iconic ghost images of all time. Today, Rainham Hall still stands. It's open to the public, filled with antiques and history. Some claim the brown lady hasn't been seen since 1936. Others say she never left. And maybe, just maybe, if you walk those halls alone, you'll feel it. The sudden drop in temperature. The sensation of being watched. The hush of a presence just out of sight. And if you ever see her, standing silently in brown at the end of a candlelit hall, don't get too close. Because her eyes? They're not there at all. The Sallie House, Atchison, Kansas, a child's unrest. The year is 1870. You're Dr. Charles Finney, a respected physician in the quiet town of Atchison, Kansas. Your family has just moved into a newly built 2-story house on North 2nd Street. It's a modest but proud home, sturdy and warm, and you've converted part of the main floor into your medical practice. For a time, life is balanced. Patients come and go, your children laugh in the upstairs rooms, and everything seems, if not perfect, then settled until that night. You'd just finished your final checkup, a long and taxing day behind you. The fire had burned low in your hearth, and your body begged for rest. You were climbing into bed, your eyelids already heavy when you heard it, a loud, frantic knock at your front door. It was far too late for a visit. A deep sense of unease bloomed in your chest, but duty overtook hesitation. You rose, wrapped your robe around you, and made your way down the stairs. When you opened the door, a woman stood there in the cold, wild-eyed, soaked from head to toe in the winter rain. Clutched in her arms was her young daughter, barely 6 or 7, pale, wheezing, clutching her stomach and writhing in pain. The mother cried, pleading, "Please, she's in agony. You have to help her. She can't walk. She's burning up." All your exhaustion vanished. You ushered them inside, guiding them down into your examination room in the basement. The child, whose name was Sallie, could barely speak. Her tiny fists clenched her abdomen. You recognized the signs immediately: acute appendicitis, dangerous, possibly fatal. She needed surgery, and she needed it now. The mother sobbed as she signed her consent. Do anything you can. Just save her. You washed your hands, lit the surgical lamp, and prepared your instruments with the steady calm of a man trained for emergencies. You administered the anesthesia, ether, the best available at the time, and began the procedure. And then came the scream. A sound no human should ever have to hear. Raw, helpless, primal pain. Sallie jolted under the knife. Her eyes flew open. She could feel everything. Every cut. Every slice. Somehow the dosage had been wrong. She hadn't gone under. And in that horrific moment of confusion and panic, her body went into shock. Her small frame convulsed once, twice, and then went still. Sallie died on that table, aware, terrified, and in agony. You stood frozen, bloody hands trembling, staring at what had just happened. The mother collapsed beside her daughter, screaming, so loudly it seemed to shake the foundation of the house. And then there was silence. To this day, there is no hard proof that this event ever happened. No hospital records, no obituary under Sallie's name, no documented lawsuit or inquest into Dr. Finney's care. Most historians chalk it up to folklore, a local legend passed through generations. But you can't deny how deeply the story has embedded itself into the house. Whether myth or truth, it is the name Sallie that defines this home, forever etched into the identity of what is now known as the Sallie House. Even if that surgery never happened, something happened there. Because ever since that night, whatever night it may have been, the house has never been the same. Over the years, reports began to trickle out. First, soft footsteps when no one was home, doors opening and closing on their own, the sound of a child giggling in an empty room. At first, it was written off as the creaks and groans of an old house settling. But then came the scratches. 1. Resident described waking up to deep claw marks across his chest. Another claimed to have been pushed down the stairs by something unseen. Objects moved, lights flickered, children cried when they entered certain rooms, especially the upstairs. Nursery. Some even swore they saw a little girl peering out the second-story window when no one was inside. By the 1990s, the activity became too much. Families fled. No one could stay for long. The house was eventually abandoned as a residence altogether and began a new life as a paranormal hotspot. If you've followed any ghost hunting media, you've likely heard of it. YouTubers like Sam and Colby, Nick and Ryan, and Exploring with Josh have filmed their investigations there. Paranormal television shows from around the world have spent nights in its walls. Each walk away with stories, equipment malfunctions, EVPs, sudden temperature drops, whispered voices, scratches, panic attacks, sometimes full-on possession. No matter what angle they take, skeptical or sensational, the same theme emerges. The house doesn't want you there. In recent years, the Sallie House has become a destination for ghost hunters, thrill seekers, and tourists alike. You can even book overnight stays if you dare. And this commercialization brings up a fair question. Is it all just marketing? Is the ghost of a girl named Sallie simply a tool, a brand, a clever way to monetize fear? Maybe. But try telling that to the dozens of people who've fled in the middle of the night. Try telling that to the investigators who've left shaking, white-faced, unwilling to speak of what they saw. Because legend or not, something waits inside those walls. Something small, something angry, something that never understood why she died. And maybe she never will. So if you ever visit Atchison, and if you ever walk up the path to that unassuming white house with its peeling paint and shuttered windows, remember this. She was in pain, She died afraid, and now she may not be, alone in the dark. Monte Cristo Homestead, the House of Tragedies. Junee, New South Wales, Australia. A legacy written in shadows. You're a pioneer, a builder of dreams in the sun-scorched soil of 19th century New South Wales. It's 1885. You and your wife, weathered but proud, stand before a creation born not of chance but of sweat, sacrifice, and an almost obsessive devotion. Your home, Monte Cristo Homestead. A majestic double-story Victorian manor, red brick and wrought iron balconies perched atop a lonely hill. From this height, the town of Junee spreads out like a painting, quiet and content beneath the blazing Australian sky. This isn't just architecture, it's a monument to ambition, endurance, and love. You built it not merely to live in, but to endure. You carved it into the landscape to withstand generations, and for a time, it does. Children run laughing through the halls. Lamps glow warmly through the long evenings. Laughter, music, and footsteps echo across hand-laid floorboards. Life grows here, slowly, proudly, intimately, and when you and your wife pass, it is peacefully, under the very roof you built. A full circle, a life well lived, but you don't see what comes next. Time forgets what it doesn't cherish. And the generations that follow don't share your connection to the land or the walls. They drift away. The house becomes empty. First for a season, then for years. The paint peels. Dust claims every corner. Birds nest in broken eaves. Where once there was family, now there is only silence. And then, something stirs in that silence. Fast forward to 1963. A new couple arrives, Reg and Olive Ryan. They're not descendants. They're not heirs. They're strangers drawn to the house by something they couldn't quite explain. The house, though rotting, calls to them, and like you once did, they answer. Where others saw decay, they saw potential. Reg with his hammer, and Olive with her patience began to reverse time itself. Brick by brick, floorboard by floorboard, Monte Cristo rose from the grave. A revival, a resurrection. But with that resurrection came something else. It was just days after they moved in. They'd been out for the evening, a dinner with friends in town. The night was cool, unusually still. As their car approached the winding gravel drive, Reg squinted at the house in the distance. "Do you see that?" he asked Olive. The windows were glowing. All of them. From a distance, it looked as if the entire homestead had been lit from within, casting a golden light into the night. The house, abandoned for years, with only partial electricity, shone like a beacon. But Reg was sure. No lights had been left on. No wiring was finished upstairs. And they certainly hadn't installed anything powerful enough to bathe the windows in that much illumination. They stopped the car, sat in silence, watching. Then slowly, as they inched closer, the lights faded, one by one, like candles blown out in a chapel. By the time they reached the front steps, the house was pitch black. They searched every room. Nothing. No heat from recently running bulbs. No flickering lamps. Just silence. Cold and heavy and still. Olive didn't sleep that night. The next day, they brought their cat. A small, timid creature who hated car rides but adored Olive. When she set it gently down inside the front hall, it paused, then its back arched sharply. It hissed, low and guttural, eyes wide in raw terror, but there was nothing there, no sound, no movement, no presence. But something had terrified that animal to its core. It turned, bolted, gone into the bush. They searched for hours, days. They never found it again. That was when the whispering began. First, it was their daughters. The youngest claimed she saw a man standing at the top of the staircase, watching them silently from the shadows. but no one was upstairs, and the doors were locked. They heard footsteps, heavy ones, crossing floorboards late at night, walking from room to room. Doors opened and closed. Drawers were found yanked out and left askew. A chair would be pushed over in the middle of the night. At one point, a full mirror shattered, not fallen, not cracked, but shattered, clean across the floor, without explanation. Then came the voices, whispers, breaths, moans, sometimes humming, sometimes sobbing, and sometimes laughter. High, soft, childish laughter from empty rooms. But Monte Cristo's darkness wasn't just born from strange sounds and flickering lights. Its history, the one hidden behind the grandeur, was steeped in tragedy. A young child from the Crawley family, one of the early owners, fell down the grand staircase, dying instantly. Another child, a stable boy, was burned alive in the caretaker's shed, trapped by someone who locked the door from outside. A maid, unmarried and pregnant, either fell or jumped from the second-story balcony. One man, mentally impaired and unwanted, was said to have been chained for decades. Beneath the house, kept like an animal, he died there, alone, filthy, and screaming into stone walls. Each life lost, each scream unacknowledged, left an imprint. Monte Cristo did not forget. Most families would have run, but Reg and Olive stayed. They didn't pretend nothing happened. They acknowledged the house's darkness, even embraced it. They opened Monte Cristo to the public, transforming it into a museum of antiques and ghosts alike. Visitors toured not only relics of colonial life, but whispered legends of those who never left, and the house responded. Tourists fainted in the nursery. Mediums reported energy spikes. Paranormal investigators recorded whispers, light anomalies, and thermal signatures in rooms that should have been empty. Some walked in fine and walked out marked, scratched, dizzy, or so disturbed they never returned. Over decades, Monte Cristo appeared in documentaries, ghost shows, and countless investigations. And through it all, Olive Ryan remained the soul of the house, guiding guests, telling stories, protecting the secrets. Until January 2023. When Olive passed away, the house fell silent again. It is now closed to the public. But the stories never stopped. Locals still report seeing lights in the upper windows, still hear the faint sound of laughter, still feel watched as they pass by. So what do you believe? Was Monte Cristo truly haunted? Were the Ryans victims of a haunted inheritance or architects of a clever legend? Was it grief or ghosts? I leave that to you. But if you ever find yourself near Junee and you climb that lonely hill where the wind never rests, don't look too long at the windows, because someone just might be looking back. Lawang Sewu, the Thousand Doors of Terror. Semarang, Central Java, Indonesia. A monument to memory and misery. You've seen pictures, maybe a headline, maybe a passing mention in a travel guide, but nothing prepares you for standing in front of it. Lawang Sewu, 1,000 doors. Built in 1907 by the Dutch East Indies Railway Company, it was once a marvel of colonial architecture. Grand archways, stained glass, endless hallways that bent and curved with precision. A symbol of order, power, control. For decades it buzzed, with progress, clerks, engineers, telegrams, and maps. Then came 1942. The Japanese invaded. The Dutch were pushed out. And Lawang Sewu was no longer an office. It became a prison, a torture chamber, a place of death. The Japanese military converted the basement into cells and execution rooms. Prisoners were shackled, interrogated, mutilated. Screams echoed through the walls at night. Some say corpses were moved through underground tunnels and buried in the foundation. From 1942 to 1945, Lawang Sewu was a place of unspeakable suffering. Then came October 1945. Indonesia was on the brink of independence. The Dutch returned, hoping to reclaim what they'd lost. They tunneled under the building for a surprise attack, but inside, Indonesian freedom fighters were waiting. What followed was 3 days of brutal combat, gunfire, grenades, knife fights inside marble hallways. The Dutch retreated, but the building and its ghosts remained. After the war, Lawang Sewu changed hands again, eventually falling into disuse. By the 1990s, it was abandoned. Nature crept in, roofs sagged, dust settled like ash, and that's when the stories began. People saw faces in the upper windows, heard voices whispering names, felt cold hands on their backs. Some spoke of a headless figure, others a weeping woman trapped behind locked doors. Teenagers dared each other to enter. Some came back laughing. Some didn't come back at all. In 2009, the government began restoring the building. By 2013, it reopened to the public, a polished monument to Indonesia's past, but the energy didn't leave. Visitors today still report strange occurrences. Phones die without reason. Shadows appear in photos. Distant crying echoes from the basement, now permanently closed to tourists, not for renovation, for safety. Unlike other haunted sites that lean into the fear, Lawang Sewu's caretakers want to eliminate the spooky image. They want to focus on history, not hauntings. But in Indonesia, the spirit world is not a gimmick. It's real. Locals avoid the building. They fear spirits might attach to the disrespectful, that if you speak too loudly near the basement, it listens. So now you're standing here. A door creaks behind you. A breeze brushes past, though the air is still. Your phone flickers. You feel not alone. And in that moment, you understand. Lawang Sewu doesn't just have 1,000 doors. It has 1,000 stories, and one of them may now include you. And so, these are not just ghost stories. They're pain, memory, and lives that never found peace. You don't have to believe in ghosts. But maybe the real fear isn't what we see. It's what stays behind when no one's looking. Thanks for watching. Sleep well, if you can.